No charges will be filed at this time for the man who drove into protesters at this Elijah McClain protest in July. District Attorney George Brockler said that driver was trying to flee the scene and avoid the crowd and avoid the truck that rammed into him.
And you can see an image here of what's going on. This is northbound. Over here on the left, this upper one is southbound.
As District Attorney George Brockler looks at the evidence before him, he believes the driver was just trying to get out of a tense situation.
It's never just what happened, it was what was intended.
This is the moment a white truck crashed into the Jeep. The truck's driver says he wanted to stop the Jeep from continuing on.
Once he's struck by that truck, what would a normal person in that situation do? And if someone back there is watching this on Facebook Live saying, well, I would have stopped and tried to figure out why they hit me, I wouldn't have.
You see videos of him being slowed down, trying to get around those vehicles. And so if he wanted to stay away from those protesters, I think not charging into them would have been the best course of action.
All right. Posted this story on social media. Overwhelming response, like 14,000 comments. And overwhelmingly, people supporting the DA and the driver of that Jeep. As that Jeep comes on the highway, there's a woman riding a motorcycle who's sort of blocking the street of the ramp. He drives around her. The motorcycle starts chasing him. And then as he comes up to the street, you saw that white pickup truck then rams into the Jeep. And then the Jeep, once he gets rammed, then drives away, again, driving around and then through the crowd of protesters. The video was shocking, but the DA's decision was no charges. It was justified, the actions of the driver of the Jeep. So posted on social media, got your reaction. We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day from Tony, who says, last I checked, motor vehicles are allowed to drive on the highway. And I don't think people should be walking down the highway because they might get struck by a motor vehicle. Bernard, I want to start with you on this. And this is my stance on protests. I support protest First Amendment. My concern, and it's a safety concern for everyone involved, is that protests on streets and highways are inherently dangerous. If you're going to march, if you're going to protest, how about on the sidewalks, in the parks? What are your thoughts about mixing protesters on streets with motor vehicles?
So obviously, of course, Vinny, it is dangerous for protesters to take it onto a highway where vehicles are driving and where they are entitled to be. However, these protesters were still exercising their First Amendment right. If anything, I would have requested for law enforcement to have been there to actually block off the highway so cars couldn't get on the highway. We have seen that in Colorado and in other states where protests have taken onto the highway. However, regardless, I agree with the decision from the prosecutor not to pursue charges in this case. There are no issues of fact. What I like about this prosecutor is that he was transparent in his decision making. He told us and showed us why he did not pursue any charges in this case. And because of his way of showing us and telling us, people can respect his decision.
Bernarda is still going after Cameron in Kentucky, even here in the final segment. All right, Jessica writes tonight, oh, you mean he fled because he didn't want to get ripped from his vehicle and beaten by a mob after being followed and rammed by a truck? The audacity of some people. Andrew, was this the right call by the DA?
How could it not be the right call? I don't understand debating the inherent risk associated with climbing onto an open highway. So not only is there a risk to the bystanders that's obvious and apparent by the actions that they're taking, what do you do when you're in that situation? This isn't a politics issue. It's not which side you're on or not on. I've had people that I've represented recently who were harassed or bullied because of their association with the other side. So it goes both ways. People are being violated on both sides in a violent, chaotic way. To think that you're under siege and that there might be something that goes wrong here, I think it's obvious to a bystander that these are dangerous situations to be a part of. And so if you're going to put yourself in that situation, and sometimes it is with purely altruistic purposes to it, but you got to know that there's danger to it.
Patty tonight, the motorcycle and the guy in the pickup should be charged. That's interesting. Imran, your thoughts there, the motorcycle. This was the woman on the motorcycle who was trying to block people from getting on the highway and then started following the Jeep. And the truck is the white truck that we saw in the video that rams into the Jeep to try to stop him as well. Should those two be charged?
I actually think that there is somewhat of a compelling argument to say at least the Jeep that rammed into the other Jeep should have some sort of a criminal charge. But, you know, at the very least, there's going to be some civil liability here. I think that there may be some lawsuits coming out of this, both against the Jeep that rammed into the blue Jeep and also the one that took down the highway. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some civil lawsuits coming out of this. Even though there's no criminal charges being filed right now, I am confident that there's going to be some civil liability, or at least some lawsuits seeking some civil liability. And again, there's going to be that defense, I think, from the attorneys for this Jeep, assumption of risk. These guys were on the highway. They were protesting a highway. It's not a side street. It's a main thoroughfare. You're going to assume the risk. You're going to take that risk, and you may have a barreling Jeep coming at you.
Curtis, tonight, in the 4 states I've lived there's a sign at every on-ramp that says no people, no tractors, no horse and buggy, or something to that effect. Here's my question, Bernard, and you kind of spoke about this initially. Should there be more coordination when we have these, because a lot of these protests, sometimes they're spontaneous. Sometimes they start in one place and all of a sudden they move somewhere else. Should they be mapped out? Should they be coordinated with law enforcement? Which is sort of ironic because the protests are about law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Vinny, because regardless whether there's protests going on against law enforcement is charged with protecting the people, protecting the city. So law enforcement will still be responsible for trying to prevent any acts of violence, such as a car driving through a pool of people. So law enforcement will have to take on some kind of accountability, because I am quite sure if there were any lawsuits that were to be filed, the city will be one of the named defendants in that lawsuit for not having protect and serve the people in that community.
Kimmy tonight says, when I was a kid in the 70s, Mama would sometimes tell me to go play in the street. She didn't really mean it. I guess these people thought the parents were for real, because I see a lot of them out there acting a fool in the streets and don't have enough sense to move when they see a vehicle coming down the street. Only have about 5 seconds here. Andrew, are you shocked about the overwhelming lack of sympathy for the protesters here?
No, if people are in the street, the police need to get them off the street. Everybody's got to be protected. Get them out of dangerous situations. They were there because they didn't want to be dealing with the police.
All right. Fantastic job. Bernardo Villalona, Imran Asari, Andrew Cherkasky, thank you so much. Please come back. That's it for tonight, folks. We're here every night, 3 hours, taking you inside the world of crime and justice. Have a wonderful night. And as always, don't forget to hug the kids.